As soon as Michael saw me, he pleaded with me. "Please. Take care of me." "Why should I?" I blurted out reflexively. "Who do you think you are to say that?" "Who was it that said, 'No way, ask someone else,' when I was hospitalized with a broken bone? You got yourself into this mess. You should be grateful you're still alive." This is the last time I'll lend a hand to Michael. My name is Jessica. I'm 32 years old. I got married 5 years ago, and now it's just me, my husband Michael, our son Jason, and our Shiba Inu, Rocky. Our little family of 3 and a pet. Michael works for a major IT company and is incredibly busy every day. He leaves home early in the morning, and it's not uncommon for him to come back after midnight. He often works on weekends and travels for business once a month. As a result, Michael has very little time to spend with his family, and barely any memories of playing with Jason. However, this has allowed Michael to progress smoothly in his career, reaching a managerial position in his 30s. Thanks to his hard work, we were able to build a detached home in New York, which was my dream. My parents live in a rural area and run a farm. Because of this, I've always had a strong desire for a suburban home with a yard. Jason and I are able to live comfortably thanks to Michael. I've come to terms with the limited family time we have. To outsiders, we might seem like a fortunate family. However, due to my husband's frequent absence, I'm left to manage childcare and household duties alone. This is what you'd call solo parenting. I wanted to put Jason in daycare and work, but Michael insisted on a kindergarten that also has classes, so Jason is attending kindergarten. As a result, I ended up being a stay-at-home mom. Thankfully, I have a dependable friend. It's Mitzi, a childhood friend of mine. We're the same age and from the same hometown. By chance, our kids attend the same kindergarten. Mitzi divorced last year and is now a single mother. Having tea at my place after dropping Jason off at kindergarten has become my only respite. We talk about our frustrations with our husbands and the challenges of parenting. While talking with Mitzi, I realized something. It seems I had unknowingly harbored resentment towards Michael. People often told me it would be sinful to feel discontent, and I believed them. Maybe I was just convincing myself not to be dissatisfied. One day, while walking Rocky, he suddenly started running. I chased after him frantically. There was a car stopped in front of us, and Rocky managed to dodge it, but I couldn't and ended up slamming into the car. It was entirely my fault. Rocky looked at me worriedly from the sidewalk. Fortunately, he was unharmed, but I couldn't get up. I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, diagnosed with a shoulder contusion and fractures in my ankle and fibula, resulting in an immediate hospitalization. It looks like I'll be hospitalized for about 3 months. I wondered what would happen to Jason's care and the chores. The more I worried, the more endless it seemed. I called Michael's phone. I thought he would help out at least this time, but he was perpetually unavailable, and there was no response. While I was fretting, Mitzi called me. It was about discussing costumes for a kindergarten play, but I cut the conversation short and asked her to take care of Jason. Initially surprised and concerned for me, Mitzi seemed relieved to hear my voice sounding more upbeat than she expected and gladly agreed to look after Jason. I was so touched that I almost cried. Next, I called my parents to briefly inform them of the accident and that I would be hospitalized for a few weeks. My mom said she would come over after sorting things out at home. Until then, Mitzi would be the one to rely on. After hanging up with my mom, I finally got a call from Michael. Sorry, I've been too busy to answer the phone. I reported the accident to Michael and asked him to bring some clothes and other necessities. However, his response was unbelievable. No way. Why should I have to do that? I have to get up early tomorrow. Ask someone else. I had thought that Michael would be incredibly worried about me, but I was the one who ended up being surprised. It wasn't just that Michael refused to bring my things, I was shocked that he didn't even seem to care. I had hoped that he would show more concern for me and our family. Was I naive to expect some kind words from Michael? The next day, Mitzi came to the hospital. She brought clothes and other essentials from my house. Mitzi has a key to my house, and I have one to hers. We've always discussed helping each other out in times of need. I brought extra towels. Let me know if you need anything else. I am deeply grateful for Mitzi's thoughtfulness. Her kindness was a comfort, especially after being let down by Michael's actions the day before. Moved by her kindness, I found myself tearing up. Mitzi chuckled and said, "Don't be so dramatic," as she handed me a handkerchief. Mitzi has a personality that is the complete opposite of mine. She is calm, good at reading the room, and empathetic. I have never seen her argue with anyone. This contrasts sharply with me, as I am looking to get certified and eager to work actively outside the home. "Are you okay? Take better care of yourself." Her ever-gentle tone soothed me. "Don't worry about Jason. He stayed over at my place last night and slept with my kids." Even without saying anything, Mitzi understood me. Why is Michael so indifferent to us? I know he's busy, but he hasn't even visited or seen Jason, has he? I voiced my frustrations about Michael to Mitzi, who had come to visit. Seeing me sighing with frustration, Mitzi smiled kindly. "Men can be like that. He's probably dealing with stress at work that we can't understand." That might be true, but not showing up or caring at all seems too much. Michael is working late, not out playing, right? That's true. Thanks to Michael, we have a comfortable life and our own home. He does provide sufficient money for us. Mitzi's words somehow made me feel better. "Let me know if you need anything. I'm flexible with my time and can come over anytime." Talking to Mitzi cleared my mind a bit. I'll have to have a proper conversation with Michael once I'm discharged. More than anything, I wanted to see Jason. My mother rushed over from the countryside, and somehow, I made it through the 3-week hospital stay and returned home. After bringing me back, my mom had to return home immediately due to farming responsibilities. After 3 weeks, my house seemed incredibly nostalgic. The one who greeted me was Rocky. As if he thought my crutches were an enemy, he started barking furiously. I sat on the sofa, looking around the living room. Nothing had changed. Indeed, there's no place like home. Even though I was settled on the sofa, Rocky wouldn't stop barking at me. There are no crutches anymore. What's wrong? Rocky dove into my bag and pulled out a handkerchief. It was the one I had intended to return to Mitzi. I had put it in my bag to wash it at home. Rocky then grabbed the hem of my pants and started pulling. It seemed he wanted to lead me somewhere. I managed to get up and followed Rocky, crutch in hand. Rocky, excited, marched ahead. He stopped in front of our bedroom, stood up, and scratched the doorknob, managing to open the door. "Why the bedroom, Rocky? What's there?" Without hesitation, Rocky stuck his head under the bed and pulled something out with his mouth. It looked like a piece of beautifully patterned fabric. Rocky dropped the fabric in front of me. It looked familiar. When I spread it out, it turned out to be a scarf. I remember seeing it a few weeks ago. Yes, Mitzi was wearing it. I saw it when she visited me in the hospital. But why would that scarf be here? I shivered at the unpleasant thought. No, that couldn't be. After all, Mitzi is my childhood friend and a kind person. I shook my head vigorously, banishing the dreadful thought from my mind. Moreover, Rocky climbed onto the bed and began pulling at the sheets. I felt a chill run through my body. If what Rocky was doing was true, it meant Mitzi had slept in our bed. The image of Mitzi's kind smile flashed in my mind. No, I must be thinking too much. I spoke to Rocky, trying to convince myself. She wouldn't be sleeping here, right? Rocky gently licked my face in response. In the afternoon, Jason came home. When he saw me, he hugged me tightly. Indeed, Jason is my sunshine. I felt a warm glow of happiness. Hesitantly, I asked him, "Where did you sleep while I was in the hospital?" "In my room." Mitzi slept over at our place too. It was fun. What did that mean? I had thought Jason stayed at Mitzi's house. Hadn't Mitzi said that? My suspicions only grew. So where did Mitzi sleep? I decided to ask Jason directly where Mitzi had slept. I don't know, but she and Daddy were talking in the living room until late. They were probably drinking too. I left Jason and went back to the bedroom again. Standing there alone, I was overwhelmed by the thought. Could it really be that Michael and Mitzi had spent time together in this bed? It can't be that Michael, seemingly indifferent to his family, slept here with Mitzi. I couldn't believe it. Or, perhaps it's more accurate to say I didn't want to believe it. The bed was neatly made, with no sign of disarray in the sheets or comforter. Yet, it seemed the scent alone couldn't be completely erased. Furthermore, something was left behind. I didn't expect Rocky would be the one to notice it. Since discovering this suspicion, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in that bed anymore. I started sleeping with Jason. He seemed happy about it and didn't find it odd. Michael had become a distasteful presence to me. Various thoughts crossed my mind, and sleepless nights became more frequent. Where did we go wrong as a couple? Around the time my cast was removed, Michael left the house in a strangely good mood. I had a bad feeling about it. While waiting for the kindergarten bus, Mitzi showed up. Today, she was dressed fashionably. Her makeup also seemed a bit more elaborate than usual. "Good morning, you're quite dressed up today. Going on a date?" I tried to ask in a playful tone, so as not to let on my suspicions. Without any hesitation, Mitzi smiled and said, "I've met someone I really like." That confirmed it. Though I had no proof, Mitzi was engaging in something reprehensible. The person Mitzi liked was the very person she should not have. I struggled to conceal my trembling hands, filled with anger. After parting ways with a beaming Mitzi, I returned home in a daze. I couldn't let Michael and Mitzi continue doing as they pleased. This had to end. Once I was able to move around without difficulty, I decided to visit my parents' home. That night, I told Michael about going to my parents next week with Jason and invited him to join. "I'm not going. I have work. You two go ahead." I had anticipated that Michael wouldn't go. However, I was disturbed by his smile. He then asked when we were leaving and returning. Despite his apparent lack of interest in me, he seemed curious about when I wouldn't be around. I told him we would leave on Wednesday and return Sunday night. "Got it. You'll be back Sunday night." Michael took out his phone and started scheduling. It was clear to me why he was so keen on confirming our return. I didn't miss the smirk on his face as he fiddled with his phone. The 5 days at my parents' house were wonderful. Jason was fascinated with farming, and he spent each day in the fields with my father, enjoying digging in the soil. On the way home, Jason repeatedly said, "It was fun. I want to come back again." The thought of the confrontation that awaited us at home weighed heavily on me. After returning from my parents, Michael announced he would be going on a week-long business trip. Until now, his trips had lasted no more than 2 nights. A whole week seemed suspiciously long. When I looked puzzled, Michael started babbling about work, which he usually doesn't mention, saying things like, "I'll be visiting a lot of clients, and maybe I'll land a big contract." It must have been to hide his guilt. Yet, he cheerfully hummed a tune while getting ready. To anyone watching, it seemed like he was preparing for a trip rather than a business trip. Michael left home early in the morning. Moreover, he unusually said, "See you," before leaving. I heard the engine sound from outside. There's no way he would need a car for a business trip. Finding it odd, I stepped outside only to see our car parked in the garage. Returning to the entrance, I casually checked the shoe cabinet and Michael's hiking shoes were missing. You wouldn't pair hiking shoes with a suit. When I checked the closet, Michael's outdoor jacket was also missing. What kind of business trip was Michael talking about? Still, the fact that Michael wouldn't be home for a week was a relief. I was glad I didn't have to see his face. By this time, I had absolutely no romantic feelings left for Michael. A few days later, while cleaning the house after dropping off Jason at daycare, I got a call on my phone. It was from an unknown number, so I answered cautiously. The call was from a hospital nestled in the mountains near my parents' house. Shocked by the call, I rushed to the hospital. I picked up Jason from kindergarten and hurried to my parents' place. In the car, I briefly explained to Jason. Michael had gotten lost while camping, slipped, and fell down a ravine. He was alive, but he suffered severe injuries, including open fractures on both legs. Fortunately, he was rescued by the local volunteer fire brigade. If not rescued, it could have been fatal. At first, Jason joked about it saying, "Just like Mom," but when I told him about the life-threatening situation, he quickly became serious and worried. I left Jason at my parents' and went to the hospital. Indeed, Michael's business trip was a lie. I knew it, yet I couldn't suppress my anger. I felt foolish for bringing Michael's change of clothes and other belongings. I also brought an important envelope with me. At the hospital, I was told Michael was being treated in the ICU. Waiting in the lobby, I could hear someone screaming in pain. It seemed to be Michael's voice. I was worried, but I also thought it was divine retribution. Soon after, a nurse guided me to the ICU. In the ICU, Michael was crying out in pain and anxiety. His neck was immobilized, and his body was wrapped in bandages. Jason would probably cause a commotion if he saw him, saying, "He looks like a mummy." Michael was displaying a truly pitiful state. Upon seeing me, he immediately began to plead. "Please. Take care of me." "Why should I?" I blurted out reflexively. "Who do you think you are to say that?" Who was it that said, "No way, ask someone else," when I was hospitalized with a broken bone? Just then, the curtain of the next bed was drawn. And I screamed. It was none other than Mitzi who was there. Obviously, she had gone camping with Michael. Mitzi was also injured, just like Michael. Not only her arms and legs, but her face and head were also wrapped in bandages. The area around her eyes was terribly bruised. She surely couldn't move as she wished under such conditions. Michael hadn't noticed that the curtain had been opened. His face was immobilized, and he probably couldn't focus on anything beyond the pain. Michael vented his pain and frustration on me. "Do you even understand my pain? Don't just stand there gawking, hurry up and take care of me." Michael had slid over 30 feet down into a ravine. It's no wonder he was in pain. He should consider himself lucky to be alive. "How could I possibly understand your pain?" I snapped back at Michael. I had reached my limit. Michael lied about being on a business trip, went camping with Mitzi, got lost, and caused serious injuries, inconveniencing everyone. And on top of that, he made a fuss about being nursed. "You brought this on yourself. Just be grateful you're alive." This was the end of me extending my hand to Michael. Our marriage had already ended. Today, here, I would put an end to it all. Mitzi was also here, so it was a good opportunity to settle everything. I decided to steadily corner Michael. I didn't care about Michael's pain at the moment, justice was on my side. Does your company call camping a business trip? Or perhaps the campground was filled with your important clients? I was not yet ready to ease up. I continued to corner Michael. Is there really a need for someone in IT to go deep into the mountains where you can get lost? Michael glared at me with teary eyes, enduring the pain. Shut up. It's none of your business. You went back to your parents' house too, didn't you? Don't lecture me. What a thing to say. I was honest about going back to my parents' house. But Michael had lied. I didn't lie. Did you have a reason you had to lie? Michael just glared at me, saying nothing. He probably couldn't retort. Turning my back on the silent Michael, I looked down at Mitzi. Did you follow Michael's lead and slide down too? Mitzi grimaced in pain and then spoke. Yes, I was trying to help Michael, and I ended up sliding down with him. What was supposed to be a fun camping trip turned into a disaster, didn't it? I laughed sarcastically. No, Jessica. You misunderstand us. Mitzi replied weakly in a small voice, her expression pained. I wondered what was misunderstood. Everything seemed completely true. I was the one who insisted Michael come camping. I know this area well and there's a secret spot here. Mitzi was defending Michael. Did she think she was the tragic heroine? Please, if you're going to blame someone, blame me. Michael did nothing wrong. Mitzi sobbed. The more she spoke, the less credible it seemed, yet she continued. I never intended to hurt you, and I'm truly sorry things escalated like this. Mitzi said, seemingly intoxicated by her own tears. Her words were too hollow. I should be the one crying. Noticing Mitzi's voice, Michael interrupted the conversation between Mitzi and me. I was just going along with Mitzi's hobby. I can't just turn down an invitation from your best friend, can I? Michael seemed determined not to admit to any affair. So the business trip was a lie after all, I said. Michael began to look agitated. Mitzi, still playing the tragic heroine, continued to defend Michael. Both of you, stop it. If you continue this disgraceful affair, you'll only bring more trouble upon yourselves. It seemed I was about to deliver retribution to Michael and Mitzi. I will stop playing along with Mitzi's self-pitying drama. I pulled out an envelope from my bag that I had brought from home. I scattered the photos from the envelope over Michael and Mitzi's hospital beds. Michael and Mitzi were speechless, their mouths agape. Their eyes were wide open as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The photos showed Michael and Mitzi entering a hotel arm in arm and entering my house intertwined. I had hired a detective when Rocky found Mitzi's scarf on the bed. Michael and Mitzi had been meeting secretly even when Jason and I were visiting my parents. Michael turned red with anger. How could you do this? Taking hidden photos is sneaky. It was just dinner together while you were hospitalized with a fracture. I almost burst out laughing at Michael's predictable tantrum. Mitzi, on the other hand, was still sobbing pitifully. While she covered her face with her hands and cried, I could see her peeking through her fingers. Maybe Mitzi was worse. Michael's tantrum continued. This is nonsense. You must have fabricated this. Michael weakly swiped at the photos with his barely moving hand. So you won't admit it? I didn't want to do this. I sighed deeply, oh, gosh, as I pulled a voice recorder from my bag. This was under the bed in our bedroom. Michael and Mitzi swallowed nervously. Sweat trickled down from under Michael's bandages. I took my time looking at them both, then pressed the play button. No, don't rush. I can't wait any longer. I pressed the stop button and asked Mitzi. Hey, do you want to hear more? Mitzi, losing her composure, shook her head violently. It seemed she was no longer in a state to fake crying. There's plenty more where that came from. You had quite a bit to say about me, didn't you? Stop it. Just stop, I'm sorry. Michael whispered in a small voice. I asked Mitzi when their relationship started. I was envious of you. I failed at marriage, yet there you were, living in a beautiful house, leading a luxurious life. And still. You always complained about Michael. So I thought, why not take him for myself? It all started with Mitzi's envy. The grass always looks greener on the other side, it seems. If Michael became mine, I thought I could live like that too. What's so wrong with that? Mitzi was defiant. She was acting as though she wasn't at fault, but as if she was the victim here. Having listened to my talk with Mitzi, Michael leaned forward and tried to snatch the voice recorder from my hands. Look out. Michael had moved his body too forcefully, likely causing intense pain throughout, and lost his balance, falling off the bed. He didn't make a sound, it seemed like he had passed out. Mitzi, shocked, looked at Michael. I pressed the nurse call button to summon the nurses. They arrived quickly and urged me to leave the ICU. As soon as I stepped into the corridor, I realized my legs were shaking. Although I had been forceful in my conversation, I was actually very scared. While Michael was hospitalized, I began the divorce proceedings. I had ample evidence of his infidelity, and my lawyer said it would likely sway the divorce in my favor. I would demand a lump sum and child support from Michael. But that alone seemed insufficient punishment for Michael. I would also make sure the division of property was handled thoroughly. The house was sold and liquidated, the savings divided equally, and stocks and investment products were split. Michael's parents came to me, sincerely apologizing for his actions. They assured me they would oversee the payment of the lump sum and child support. Jason, who is fond of his grandparents, promised to visit them occasionally. I filed for damages against Mitzi as well. She will have to pay back the amount, little by little. Due to the accident, Mitzi was left with an after effect in one leg. She now needs a cane to walk. Michael's condition was even worse, he was almost at the point of needing his lower limbs amputated. He ended up unable to move his legs and now lives a life confined to a wheelchair. The affair was disguised as a business trip. Moreover, the severe injuries incurred led to harsh reprimands from his company. He was demoted as a disciplinary action. Though it could have been a dismissal, his past performance was taken into account. No one in the company sympathized with Michael anymore. Exposed to cold stares, he felt alienated. Having lost his home, his savings were depleted by the lump sum and child support payments, and he now lives in an old apartment. Obviously, it's not barrier-free, so he seems to be struggling significantly with his daily life. Recently, Michael's father updated me on his situation. Michael and Mitzi have split up. For Mitzi, a wheelchair-bound Michael was no longer a desirable partner. Neither Michael nor Mitzi likely anticipated their affair would lead to such consequences. They must be regretting not stopping themselves, not telling the truth at that moment. But no amount of regret can turn back time. Jason and I decided to move back to my parents' house. With my parents around, and Jason enrolled in daycare, I found the time to take a job at a local real estate company. I'm studying hard to obtain several real estate certifications. Jason, who loves nature, is thrilled with our new life, enjoying more opportunities to engage with the outdoors. Every morning, before sunrise, he goes to the fields with my father to take care of the crops. He loves watching my father operate the tiller. No doubt, he thinks of his grandfather as a hero. After helping in the fields, Jason heads to daycare, where he plays to his heart's content before coming home. He's tanned and seems much more robust than when we lived in the city. Considering Jason, living in a place surrounded by nature rather than the city was probably better. My parents are also happier every day, always smiling because of the lively atmosphere. The real hero of this story, Rocky, seems to like it here too. While he used to dislike walks, now he insists on walking him every morning. He loves being in the fields with Jason and my father, playing and getting muddy. During a recent family picnic by the riverbank, Jason suddenly stood up. "When I grow up, I want to be like Grandpa." My father smiled broadly and tousled Jason's hair affectionately. My mother also looked at Jason with joy.